Now time for public requests. To come to the podium, you may state your name and address, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you, Dr. Forstad.
My name is Jody Forstad. I live at 711 Parkside Circle North, across the street from Sugar Sand Park. I've never been here. I've been at the old meeting, and you're very brave to have a lot of chairs here for more people to come and abuse you. But I've heard they've abused you more and had to move to other places for bigger audiences. I'm representing Boca Hoops, which most of you know is our youth basketball program. We're in our 32nd year, and I wanted to first, and that's what I'm here, to thank you all for the field house that was established. It's housed part of our program, since we do use the high schools and the middle schools, but it's been the center of our program for both our Boca Hoops program and our program for special needs, which is our High Five program, which has been started by Mr. Cohn for the past 17 years. So that's our home. It's absolutely a phenomenal place. I want to thank them for, we had a few problems with leaks in the field house, which have been corrected. Our next request is the seating, their old seats, the railings for the seating and the bleachers don't work, or they're not there, which makes it very difficult for parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents to see their kids play the different activities, and very unsafe. And I think you're voting on new bleachers, which really is needed. We'd like to have it before the end of August because we're starting our season, but I'll take anything I can get. You've been very generous to the program, and I really appreciate it. I will make one mention, because we do speak to the city has been really wonderful in helping maintaining the program and getting our program started each weekend and during the weeknights. And they mentioned that the gentleman that takes care of the gym has said that the pickleball players, they line and reline the courts, they take tape on and off the court for them to participate, and they're taking the varnish off the floor from taking the tape on and off, which is detrimental to the floor. I'm not against pickleball, I promise you I'm not, but one of my patients who is an avid pickleball player said that unsolicited, that pickleball is best played outdoors and not indoors. So I'm just throwing that out, but we don't want the floor to, we've been very good about keeping the floor well, making sure no water gets on it, drinks and so forth. And we don't want things like, especially the varnish, and I don't want Mike and my name to come off the floor either. But I just mentioned that. But the bleachers are really important. They're just not safe right now. And we want the safety for the families of Boca to be good, so they can watch our kids play. Not only basketball, but volleyball and gymnastics and everything that's going on in the field house. And again, I want to thank the commissioners for such a facility. And I'll just throw out, if they find money to make another field house somewhere, that'd be great too. I'll go another 32 years of Boca Hoops if you like. But thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Forstad. And if you'll keep doing Boca Hoops for another 32 years,
Okay,
you'll figure something
you
out.
can bury me, under the field house. That's fine. Thank you.
Who else would like to speak? Mr. Galanis, welcome.
Hi, good evening. Greg Galanis, 1780 Southwest 22nd Ave. I had a bunch of stuff prepared to present tonight, and I've chosen not to. I reached out to all you guys last week, and I only talked to a handful and didn't get a very positive response. But I did want to reflect the thoughts and comments from our golfers. This morning, Barry and I played in our A-League. Monday, we've got a small group of 12 and under handicaps, and I asked them, I went through my stuff, and what was top of mind for them was frustration and anger and disappointment. We are over 2.5 years in, $10+ million spent of taxpayer money, and we're still sitting here waiting for a design approval from the city. And reflecting my members' feelings and sentiments, we expect more from our elected officials. I didn't intend to speak to you guys directly. I was hoping, I understood the mayor was supposed to be here tonight, and you know, everybody's got some skin in the game here. My experience in the last 3 years is nothing gets solved in this room or in the city council workshop and city council meetings. Things get solved, solutions get made, and paths get forged in between staff. So my advice is to get staff in a room together and find a path forward. $10 million taxpayer money spent over 2.5 years, and we don't have an approval on the design right now. It's not okay. Golfers are getting very nervous and concerned about their home, and again, it's my obligation representing them to let you know how they feel. And they will be calling you, they will be calling the mayor. You know, they want to see some progress. I appreciate all that you guys do. You know, I've been here through this whole process, and I respect you all a great deal. But at the end of the day, we need solutions, and we need problem solvers, and we need to find a path forward as opposed to throwing rocks at each other between city council and beach and parks. And as always, my group is here to provide input, provide suggestions and recommendations, and to support you guys every step of the way. Thank you.
Great. Who else would like to speak?
My name is Harold Chaffee, 6200 Northwest 2nd Avenue. I'm the president of Keep Down from Boca. I just wish we get a little more update on where we stand with lease and convey. I think we're supposed to get some kind of answer from the state. It may take quite a while to get that, but we just don't know where we are with that. Also, are we making any progress with the city? Is there any dialogues back and forth, or is it just waiting? You know? Do we have any kind of a meeting set? There's supposed to be a joint meeting. Is there any joint meeting set up? Yeah, I don't know whether we're going to go through with that or not. I'm not sure. So,
April 13th.
okay. And on the East Course, all right, the kids are still riding motorcycles back then. You know, I could get them on a Sunday morning. They're racing back and forth. I really couldn't. I know I called the cops about 2 or 3 months ago because there was 4 of them out there. I don't know what kind of progress they made. You know, it's trying to, if you hear them, you know, even if the cops come, they can't really locate where they are. All they can see is where they're entering, where they're getting on, and it seems to be they're getting in through Jeffrey Street. So it's basically just, you just wait long enough, they have to come back out. They have to bring their bikes back out. But, you know, updates, that's what we need, I guess. You know, we're all getting frustrated about, seems like nothing's going on. And I'm not being sarcastic. You know, I really, you know, it's a waiting game right now, I guess, and we just have to wait to see what happens. All right, thank you. And you're all doing a great job, really. This is a long-term project. It started out, you know, robust and then just died down. You know, there's a lot of things going on. But you should never be blamed. You know, you've always been there. So, thank you. Oh, I wanted to tell you about since he's late, I'll tell you about the Federation meeting tomorrow. Should I tell what's gonna happen? No, I can read too.
All right, good morning. Tom Thayer here, 4821 North Dixie Highway in beautiful Boca Raton, Florida. As we just heard, we do have a Federation meeting tomorrow morning, bright and early. Doors open at 8 o'clock and the program starts at 8:30 at the Downtown Community Center in the Silver Palm Room. And it's going to be a little different this time. It's going to be a quasi candidate forum, if you will. We only had one challenger in all the council races this go around. and that's Bernie Korn. And he's challenging our mayor, Scott Singer, and so that'll be an actual candidate forum. But we've also invited the two people that ran unopposed, Andy Thompson and Andrea O'Rourke. So it's gonna be a lot of fun tomorrow. Stop by, it's all free, 8:30 at the community center downtown. And we see several of you from time to time, and this might be a fun one to be at. By the way, the undercard tomorrow will be our city traffic attorney, Maria Tejera. And obviously, she's the one that's responsible for all the traffic in the downtown area. So come and see what she's doing to improve the situation, and maybe give her a few ideas on how to handle traffic. There you go. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Would anyone else like to speak? Mr. McKay? No? Okay. Well, since nobody's jumping up, public requests are now closed. It's time for the approval of the minutes of the February 18th, 2020 board meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second. Bob, second.
Mr. Rollins will second. Discussion, commissioners? All in favor of approving, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne. Okay. We're going to have Melissa step up to the podium and discuss the Sugar Sand Park bleachers that Dr. Forstadt was discussing.
Good evening, Commissioners. You have in your packets on page 30 a memo from myself recommending replacement of the bleachers for a lot of the same reasons why Dr. Forsythe outlined. This is one of the items that I proposed to bring in to be funded for this year. So we did a RFP. Our attorney's office had reviewed the RFP before it went out, and then we went through the process and got the bids in. So attached on page 31, there was 2 companies that bid. We had a pre-bid meeting. 3 companies had showed up for the pre-bid meeting. One company let me know that they were not going to move forward and bid, and then we ended up with 2 bids for the bleachers. The recommendation I have on the bleachers is, as it was mentioned, the bleachers are old, and they're wood, which is a couple of things. One, they were installed in the building prior to the time of what the codes are now, so they don't have all the guardrails that when they're moved out of their current location and moved around the facility, they don't have all the guardrails. So this will bring us up to code with getting guardrails for when they're moved around for Boca hoops within the facility, as well as it will extend the longevity of the floor, because each year when we go in, or it's not every year, they go in and do some revarnishing, but periodically we also go in and sand down the top layer of the floor. And as you do that, that literally is taking the top layer of the floor off, and your boards get thinner and thinner. And I can tell you from experience that FAU things will go through them eventually, because we did have some hydro ribs that went through them that I lifted up and helped get out and kind of patch the floor sometime. So this will also help with getting the new set would be of the plastic console bleachers, wouldn't be chair backs, still just be bleacher seats, but they're plastic and they're more lightweight than the wooden ones, so that would relieve some of the pressure from the floor as well. So it's my recommendation that we replace the bleachers in there. The 2 bids we got, the one bid was $146,800, and the second bid is $118,335. Those are both base bids. Per my recommendation would be to go with Gulfstream Sports to not only include the base bid, but also to include the 2, the motorized telescopic option and the removal of guardrails. That would make for a total of, I'm sorry, let me go back to my first page. For a total of $125,335. Any questions or concerns?
And so what was our budget now, is it 150?
$150,000.
Is there a warranty that they get on these, like in terms of the
I don't,
motorized?
yes, I don't remember off the top of my head what it is, Aaron, I gotta be honest with you, but there is a warranty on both companies. Both of these companies, are the actual name of you have the vendor who is working with a supplier. The supplier are 2 of the biggest names in the industry. Gulfstream Sports works with Irwin Seating Systems, and SSE and Associates works with Hussey.
Melissa, a couple questions. First of all, how the existing bleachers that are there, how long have they been there?
As far as my knowledge is, they've been there since the building has been there. They were installed, they have not been replaced.
So they're at least 20 years old, I guess.
Dr.
correct?
Forsett says yes.
Okay, and then, did the bid process, just to make sure we're clear on the bid process, I don't recall, and help me out, when did we authorize bidding the RFP out for these bleachers? Did we do this recently, or when did we do this?
We actually did not talk about doing the RFP. I talked with Brianne and we agreed to put the RFP out, and then we went to Sam and them, knowing that you guys could reject doing the process if you did not want to select a company and move forward.
So you have not done an RFP?
Yes, we have done the RFP.
But a public notice of RFP?
Yes.
So when did that,
It was, what, 30 days ago, 45 days ago, you was supposed to?
Yeah, I mean, the bids were due on February 14th, and it was just over a 30-day public advertisement. We advertised it 2 different times. The dates were sent to Jacob to review and approve, as well as the whole RFP was sent to Jacob to review and approve.
and so in that bid process, you did include specifications, exact detailed specifications
Yes, sir.
of the type of bid that you wanted
Yes, sir.
on that, okay? And as far as the budget goes, again, help me out here, did we budget for
Yes.
for this, we included the budget for this fiscal year for the bleachers in the,
Correct.
okay?
Yes.
So you're within your budget, and you've got specs for it, and you're happy with the vendors,
Yes, sir.
and you're good to go.
And you will find the warranty and get that information to us at some point.
Yes.
Okay. Just
I believe it's a 10-year warranty, but I just don't want to say that offhand, but I'm pretty sure it's a 10-year warranty, but I'll
That's on the
double check
motor.
that.
the motors.
Yes.
So, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept and award the business to Gulfstream Sports for new bleachers, pending validation of the warranty and making sure it's comparable to the industry's standards. So,
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We'll give that one to Mr. Engel, he was just as.
Photo finish.
Is there any more discussion? Any questions? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa.
And as a quick note to Dr. Forsythe and the board, is it was part of the bid process is that they would have to be finished installing the bleachers by August 1st of this year. So that's the projected, and we gave them that date, so they ran a little bit behind. We would still meet the middle of the month deadline for when Boca Hoop starts.
You just made them happy.
Thank you,
Great.
commissioners.
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, we have the number 2 item, which is the NGF report on the phasing for the golf course. And we welcome Mr. Richard Singer from NGF. And thank you for the complete report, Mr. Singer.
You're welcome. I'll come over here.
Please do.
Okay. Thank you all. Good to be back, see some movement in your Boca National, proposed Boca National Golf Club concept. We were brought in this time to take a look at some sequencing options, and although the proposals that initially were shared with us, it looked like there were 4 or 5 different options. It really all boiled down to 2 options, an east of side first or a west side first development option. So we tried to kind of streamline that for you to take a look at what's involved and what would be involved in developing this new Boca National Golf Club in phases. And largely because, let's see how does this move now. Where am I pushing? How do I advance this? And advance, very good. You got it. So we're looking at it basically at option A and an option B, which is essentially do the east side first or do the west side first. Those are really essentially what your options are and what it really boils down to. And in light of all that, we have one other concern or one other constraint that was given to us, which is the budget for the district. And that was provided to us by the district that in these years, in fiscal year 2021, you'd have 5 million, 22, 3 million, 23, 4 million, and 24, 2 million. Given that those funds would not become available until October 1, the first day of the fiscal year, that was our understanding. So that regardless of which option you did, option A or option B, it had to fit within this budget constraint. So only certain elements of each side could be developed in phases over time. You could do the east side first, or you could do the west side first, and we were asked to take a look at what that would look like for both sides, which we have done. And in summary, it really appears to us, based on our analysis, that the option B looks like the better of the two options, and that is to do the west side first. And the reason for that is the biggest revenue driver of this property is going to be the 18-hole championship golf course. And it's our belief, and the numbers bear it out, that the quicker you can get that open and operating, the more revenue that will generate for the district. Either option, you're going to lose money for the first couple of years because you're only going to have a few of the elements open and operating. The question is, how do you minimize those losses? How do you make those losses as small as possible? And it's clear to us that the west side development first is the option to do it. And the way that works is, in the first year, you will essentially build a 9-hole golf course on the north parcel, on the west side. And in the second year, you'll open that. So you'll have a 9-hole regulation course open. And then while that's happening, you would build the second 9 holes on the south side of Jeffrey Street. And then at the end of that year, or possibly even the middle of the year, depending on how construction goes, you would have all 18 holes open and ready to go for fiscal year 2022. And then in year 3, which is FY 2023, it would be a profitable venture for the district. You would have the full 18 holes open and operating, and then while that's open and operating, you then go across the street and build all the elements on the east side, and then you finish with the final project, which is the tunnel that connects the two. Among the reasons why the west side development first is a better option is, number one, as I said, the core amenity and most important revenue generator is the 18-hole golf course, so I think it's wise for you to build that first. Number two, the revenue from all the elements on the east side, which is a short little pitch and putt course, a driving range, a putting course, all of those elements don't equal the revenue that you could get from just one 9-hole regulation course on the west side. And then the third reason is, if you do the east side first, you'd have to wait until all 18 holes are finished before you can build the tunnel to connect the two, which means you may not be playing on the 18-hole course until the 4th year of the development instead of the 2nd year of the development if you do the west side first. So I hope that's not too overly convoluted, but basically what we're showing is that the west side development first is the preferred strategy here. And the primary reason is because you get the championship 18-hole golf course open and operating more quickly. That's where the real revenue comes from to the district. And as you can see, through the first 2 years, both options are going to lose money for the district. Both options on operations. They're not operationally profitable. But what did I do? Touched it. Oh. Now do I untouch it?
Touch it again.
How does it work? Wrong page.
Which page?
I was on page 4. Yep, and then go down a little lower. That's it, yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. I'll make sure I don't touch it. The project turns positive operationally more quickly under option B, which is the west side first. I don't want to go through in detail of all of the projections. The bulk of the report details what the sequencing would be under each option, so you can kind of see exactly how it sequences. The west side first with the north 9 first, followed by the south 9, followed by the east course development, followed by the tunnel. That's option B, which is the preferred method. Option A is you do the east side first, followed by the north 9, followed by the south 9, but you can't connect up to the north or south 9 until you build the tunnel, which is the last project on the thing. So I think that that's one of the reasons why it works out that way. And I don't know, I'm gonna touch it again, I'm risking it, but I wanted to move this up to show that really either option shows a negative income on operations, a loss on operations, but the loss is much bigger in option A when you do the east side first. And I think that's for the reasons that we've stated. So I think that it was kind of a limited engagement for the NGF in what you had us looking at, but I think that the pathway to success for the district, given your budget constraints in the development, that you only have a certain amount of money in these years, our recommendation to you is to build the east side first. And I think another key piece the west side first, thank you. To build the west side first. The 18-hole championship golf course first. Yes, sorry about that. And I think the other key is that we had assumed the start dates for various phases would match your fiscal year, October 1st. In order to open this golf course on October 1st, 2021, we believe that you'll have to do some of the planning and pre-construction in 2020, calendar year 2020, and you've got to have a shovel in the ground and you've got to start building this golf course in January of 2021. So there is some time urgency for that. This does match up well with the City of Boca Raton Municipal Golf Course. I've been informed that they are open at least through April of 2021. So there may be the summer of 2021 when the residents of Boca Raton may not have a municipal golf course. If the Boca Muni closes in April of 2021 and the New Ocean Breeze, the Boca National, first 9 holes doesn't open until October of 2021, you may have a few months there where there isn't municipal golf offered, but that's uncertain at this point. We know for sure that Boca Muni is going to remain open through April of 2021. That's the information that I have.
I thought it was October of this year.
October of this year.
The information that I had was it was April of 2021, so I think that that's something that we'll have to get worked through. Regardless, I don't know that there's any way that you could open the new Boca National prior to October of 2021. I think that's the earliest date that you could have it open. And I think if everything goes to schedule, you would have it open by that date. So that is the plan. And you would do the west side first with the 9 holes on the north parcel of the west side opening in October of 2021. Also, I would point out that all of our projections assume that you would have a temporary clubhouse and that the operation of the clubhouse itself, the building, would be funded out of operations. It would be an operation expense, the lease on the building. We looked into the cost of that, and we had included it here. The temporary clubhouse lease, it's about $18,000 a year to lease that and to have it on property. It would a small snack bar operation and a small merchandise operation, and the revenues reflect that as well throughout the full 5 years. We would recommend, and the plan is to have the temporary clubhouse located on whichever side you do first. So in our recommendation, you're doing the west side first, the 18-hole championship course first, so the temporary clubhouse would be on the west side of Jeffrey Street. If you did the east side first, if you chose to do the east side first, you would put the temporary clubhouse on the east side. There's also advantages to putting the temporary clubhouse on the west side because, as I understand it, the location for the permanent clubhouse is going to be on the east side. So you can have the temporary clubhouse run right up through the opening of the permanent clubhouse. Whereas if you put the temporary clubhouse on the east side, you'd have to demolish it, clear the site, and then build your clubhouse. So there would be a period of time you'd be without a clubhouse if you did it that way.
And I think also for the public's edification, we have to remember that the irrigation for the east side would depend on what we have on the west side, that it would be coming from the west side, so it would be very important to have irrigation for the east side. That's not as likely.
All the reason to do the infrastructure on the west side first. So I think it's pretty clear from the analysis that we have done that the west side first option is the way to go for this property. to get the championship 18-hole golf course open and operating as soon as you can, and try to generate some revenue from that, which I think you'll be able to do, especially if Boca Muni closes earlier than we had been informed. I think there'll be some pent-up demand for that, and I think that's the pathway to go. So it does require some quick movement. I mean, there's some things you have to do in 2020, calendar year 20, to get ready for this, so that you can begin construction as soon as January of 2021 and have the first 9 holes open in October.
I think Mr. Ernst has a question for you, Mr. Singer.
Yes. Mr. Singer, I just want to recap a couple things to make sure I understand it. As you outlined, you said in year 1, we do the 9-hole north side first, and in year 2, we would open that and start the south side construction.
That is correct.
And then in year 3, both the north and both 9 holes are open at that point. Year 4, you start the east side, which is the chip and putt as well as the driving range, and year 5, you build the tunnel. Now, all of that assumed a shovel in the ground, as you said, January 2021. Is that correct?
That is correct. The only thing I would say is that while there's no year break in between, the year 1, you're constructing the 9 holes on the north.
Right.
Year 2, you have the 9 holes on the north open, and you're constructing the 9 holes on the south. Year 3, you have all 18 holes open on the west, and you're constructing the east course. And in year 4, you build the
Okay,
tunnel.
so there's simultaneous things going on.
Correct.
Okay, got that. But this shovel on the ground thing on 2021, so what year does this get us all done by? Year 5 is what, 2026?
It's fiscal 2024, which runs into 2025. That's when the tunnel, but I would assume that the tunnel could be built as soon as the funds are released, right? So it could be built early, and the prep for it could be done leading up to it. So I would certainly think by January of 2025 or earlier, or a month or 2 earlier, it all should be ready for a winter season of the final 2 months of 24 and into the first months of 25.
Okay, so if we were to move up that time frame, does it all kind of exponentially move up, or is there a rainy season, or are we constrained by anything like that?
Well, as I understand it, you're constrained by your budget. I think that's, physically you could move it all up, but it's our understanding that these funds are only released at certain times, so that's the reason it has to be done this way.
Okay.
Steve?
Actually, I have a question for Brianne. The funding for the tunnel, is that included in that last year? It is, okay. And now, if I may, a couple of thoughts that I had with regard to fees. I noticed that some of the other golf courses had annual packages. What are your thoughts on that, as well as differential pricing for slow periods, maybe like a twilight package for the summer, or heat of the day package, if somebody starts playing at high noon in July, something like that.
Yeah, I think ultimately, the district will have to figure out what's best for you in working through that and working through the demand. We have assumed a pretty wide, varied fee schedule for this that has a number of different fee categories that range from a high of, I believe it was $89, which is the Saturday morning in February for non-residents, all the way down to fees as low as $15 for a summer afternoon in the heat, including cart. So it can get very, very inexpensive to play here. Whether or not the district wants to include some type of annual pass, I think that it's appropriate to do that, but provided that you're collecting the appropriate rate so that you're, at least charging the cost of production to the people who are purchasing those passes.
Okay.
So that you're not giving golf away.
Also, as far as the superintendent's position goes, when do you envision that starting?
That would begin during growing, right? Would you say, Wayne? I mean, in the summer.
Just prior to growing.
Yeah, so in the summer of.
So that would be the summer prior to the opening of the first 9 holes?
Yeah, then you might have some expense on that in FY 2021, which is not assumed here.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Singer, Mr. Brandwaite has a question.
Richard, can I speak from here?
Wherever.
So
I know some of the information given to you.
You can have a mic to pick you up,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Look at it. It's gonna get you on that mic, on the hanging mic.
Okay.
just to make sure you speak loud enough to give a record.
So I know some of the information given to you may not reflect this, but if we could, we can build a golf course and get it open by October, September, October, let's say October 1st of 2021. Is that what you were saying? Because you've been talking about years and financial years.
Yes,
So you're talking about the financial year of 21.
correct.
So that means that the second line would follow in 21, finish in financial year 22, and open in the middle of financial year 22, right?
The late end, we're assuming the late end. We tried to match everything up to the fiscal years. So on October 1st, 2021, which is day one of FY '22, the first 9 holes would open. And then the second 9 would be under construction during that year that the first 9 is open. And that the second 9 would be fully open by October 1st of 2022, which is day one of FY '23. And then you'd have the full 18 holes open for that fiscal year. Now, it's possible, Wayne, I think what you're saying is that you might be able to get that second 9 open a little bit earlier. You were saying June or July possibly of that year. I think if that happens, that's a bonus. But I think for planning purposes, let's try to keep it matched up to the fiscal years. There's also the risk, though, if you're too aggressive in your construction, that the district runs out of money in their construction on that, because we're assuming a certain amount of the projects and where they come in each year. And in FY 2022, the district has $3 million. And if they run out of that, they don't have it again until the beginning of the next year. The whole project could sort of sit fallow if it's too aggressive in the construction timeline. So we tried to match it up with the budget, with both things, the fiscal year day one and the budget that the district has available on those fiscal years day one. It's my understanding that that's when the funds become available, on day one of the fiscal year.
So based on these recommendations, we won't be doing anything until we get approval from the city on the design. So just for the public's knowledge, where are we on that?
Great question. We got an email, not an email, we got a letter back from the deputy city manager asking for some clarification on budget items. That was a week ago from Friday, so on Wednesday we responded to that and sent some clarification on the budget items and the design. And I just sent them the NGF report as well today, so they have that, and we gave them 30 days to respond to that.
So another 30 days
Correct.
from Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Is there any other discussion or any questions for Mr. Singer or for Mr. Branthwaite or Mr. Putnam?
I do.
Please.
Mr. Singer, just, you were familiar with the initial project scope of, it was approximately a little over 19 million for the initial project. It's now been reduced to, I think, 14.5 million. In your opinion, are we still getting the same quality and championship course? Is there anything that we gotten too tight on this, or is it still, I just want to make from your perspective what you thought of the changes that were made.
I think for the most part, the changes that were made still give you a very high-quality golf course. Some of the finer points and details may have been lost, but I don't think that the average golfer is going to notice the difference on that. And I think some of the amenities that we were proposing initially on the east side are not going to be present now. This project was originally going to have 2 clubhouses, one on each side, and a rather extensive learning center and some other facilities that are not part of this development now. So it has changed a little bit, but there's no reason that under the current design and what's been proposed here that this shouldn't be a very high-quality golf facility that would be very well thought of in the community.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Singer? I have a question. On the revenue, you show that there would be revenue from the putting course. How do you propose that would take place?
Yeah, I think that a very limited amount. We're looking at something like $5 to $7, and that the putting course would be run very similar to like a miniature golf course. That there would be green fees for use of it. If it's lighted for night use, I think that could be an outstanding venue. Very, very affordable, low price type entertainment. That's how we envision it.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Just a question, Wayne, with that putting course, we would also have another area where the golfers would putt to warm up in
That's
addition
correct,
to
yeah.
this.
Between the first and 10th tee.
Yeah, okay.
First and ninth.
Yeah, there'd be a practice green is separate from the putting course, which is a different venue, so yes. And that would be on the west side, correct, Wayne?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a miniature golf course,
It's similar, but it would be an all grass miniature golf course, yes.
It's not like putt in Delray with the,
No windmills and clowns mountains, no.
Do you want to do it now, or do you want to ask now?
It's up to you. for me.
That's fine.
Okay, so there's a few things. In your budgetary figures, there is, the entire east side is lighted. My most recent recollection is we've removed $1.5 million, which was the lighting on the east side. So that affects the
Wayne's
cost.
saying no.
Pardon me?
Wayne's saying that we didn't remove that.
Okay,
Not all 1.5.
I think we still are lighting the driving range and the putting course.
But not the short
That's
course.
okay. Learning center income. We don't have a learning center. So if we're gonna factor in teaching pro and stuff that happens like today, that number needs to be modeled off of what exists at Boca Muni as a baseline. The putting course, I don't think we've ever talked about charging for the putting course. I'm not in favor or opposed to it, but it's never been discussed. And in the financial model, you've got between $85,000 and $99,000 per year over 4 years for it. I don't know of any similar facility where it gets charged for, but it's just something to be mindful of. Couple of other factors in the projections, and I like this, that they use conservative numbers of 61 to 63,000 rounds a year. Be mindful of Boca Muni did over 69,000 in 2018, and 2019 did almost 75,000 rounds. So the number is ultra conservative. I mean, if we do 61 to 63,000 rounds in year one, we failed miserably. That's horrible. Okay?
I'm not sure I would agree with that exact terminology, but I think there's definitely potential to do better. You're a little bit higher fee than Boca Muni would be under this.
Yeah, it's $8 per round in season. So there's a couple of other factors here. One related to the number of rounds. My group, which is roughly 210 golfers, if they play twice a week, 50 weeks a year, which is a fair estimate, that's 20,000 rounds from the Boca Golf Association. Okay? Put that one down in your memory, that's an important one. Page 19 of the report here is probably the most critical items from a planning business standpoint. It talks about limiting conditions, stronger performance and weaker performance. The things that I'm most concerned with are the things that we can control. So under the stronger performance, positive regional publicity, having a robust programming and marketing, social media, lack of loyalty to existing courses. I think what's missing here is lack of respect for current golfers, because if you lose over 20,000 rounds from my 3 leagues, it's not going to be a good starting point for the golf course. Okay? Under weaker performance, the things that we can control, incorrect pricing. I think we have a good history. I think that National Golf Foundation did a really good job of baselining the market, and I think our members and the residents of Boca Raton are expecting to pay more for a quality golf course. poor customer service is a critical element. And, once we get through starting to build this course, we need to talk about who's gonna operate it and how it gets operated. That's a big deal. And the last piece, and again, I wish the mayor was here, low-quality facility, okay? So if somebody takes over the development of this course and cuts corners and ends up looking like Boca Muni in a lesser property, this is gonna be a financial disaster. The debt service alone is $1.6 million a year, which is a separate line item. It's not part of the operation stuff. This is really good, by the way. National Golf Foundation, dude. This is exceptional.
Well, thank you.
And I think that there's just a lot of little factors that we have to be mindful of, and especially the ones that we can control. Anyways.
Well, the one thing you can control is the level of service and how this is ultimately operated and managed, which we have assumed and have stated is assumed to be professional and top quality. So all of the concerns there would ultimately be addressed, but that's a lot of times easier said than done. So I think we've all seen that. It's a service business in golf, and there's always the chance that, that you can get somebody or a group that doesn't really do it well. But you have to monitor that as a board to make sure that it's in the district's best interest and the way it's being run, and that people, who use it regularly are being taken care of in service. That's very important.
But you guys, your commitment to Price Fazio building us a really good golf course is so important. If this thing goes sideways and somebody else takes control and does it on their own, not a good thing.
That's why we have Wayne here. You all voted for continuing to keep Price Fazio. Mr. Singer, thank you very much.
Thank you. I look forward to monitoring all of this and seeing it happen.
No, don't worry, we'll keep you in the loop.
Very good. Shall I remove this now? You can turn that down.
Okay, we're moving to the next discussion item, which is Ocean Strand.
Commissioners, I was asked to add this to the agenda by Commissioner Ernst, so I will turn it over to him to kind of start the conversation.
Thank you, Brian. At the last meeting, we talked a little bit about Ocean Strand, and I thought the concepts around it are good. I think conceptually, everyone, and I just want to reconfirm, do we all agree that it is a priority project to look at? And I view Ocean Strand as something that takes a long time. So it's not going to happen overnight. I'm not looking to happen overnight. But I was going to suggest that to kind of formalize the opening of this thing and ultimately maybe allocating budget dollars later in the year, is to have the district basically I'd like to make a motion, and we'll just talk conceptually about it, is to form a team both of, the district and the city, the designated city personnel. I think Aaron has volunteered to be our district lead person on it, and work with the community to develop Ocean Strand as a park. And the concept with some guiding principles I'd like to recommend is that we, number one, preserve the natural beauty and environment of it as a guiding principle. Look for the community input of the folks who are in and around that area, because I think they have a good understanding of it. I'd like to also, a third item would be address community needs at the needs assessment. I don't know the complete concept of the needs assessment, but I think it's a great opportunity to what is missing in our parks and try to have that. The last item is to guide itself with a self-sustaining model. And what I mean by that is I'm not suggesting that we do something elaborate and sell a piece or anything like that, but if that means parking meters, or if that means programming out there that generates some level of revenue to sustain it, I think we should put that as part of a guiding principle with it. But let a member of our board, a member of the city, and others of the community develop a plan From there, they'll say, these are what the community needs and best ideas. Then we can take it another step and maybe engage a professional and allocate some kind of design dollars towards it and think about what exactly that would be. But I do want to say is that Ocean Strand is such a beautiful parcel. It is very different than El Rio Park that was recently opened. And it's something that is so unique that we need to try to preserve it in some way or form.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's a great idea for long term, but I think now is the time to open it to the public. We have put our focus on golf for quite a while, and I think we've kind of forgot about this Ocean Strand for a bit. Brianne put this together for costs to open it now or within 4 to 6 months. So I was glad that you put it back on the agenda because I would like to make a motion to put aside have a line item for opening of Ocean Strand to get this done in the next 6 months. Would you say 75,000, Brianne?
For these items, yes,
Yes.
and I would need to talk to, because this was based on city staff doing it when we first talked about this last fall. So I would need to talk to them about the timeline to see how we can make all that happen.
Okay, so,
So let me ask you, Aaron, since this is the first time we talked about it, is this is a kind of a immediate opening, this is I'd call it a short-term plan.
right, exactly.
And so your proposal is to have a short-term plan,
To get those gates open.
do this,
To the
open the
public.
gates now,
Uh-huh,
and then would you be interested and committed to the longer-term plan, of
absolutely.
really designing it?
Yes,
And rather than wasting
Yeah.
any more time waiting for it, I
Yeah.
get it. Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
So a short-term and a long-term plan is kind of the
Yeah,
concept.
because we really need the public's input for the long term.
Absolutely, but I think it's important to get it open now to the public, so that the public is clear 100% that we are not selling this property and we are making it a park.
If I could, this plan is just for the west side, it's not for,
Right, not for the
not for
beach
the
side.
oceanfront side. It's minimal parking, minimal everything.
How many parking spaces?
I think it was,
20, I think you said?
20, yeah. Yeah. And if you want, we could look at parking meters now or later.
One other thing I think we need to look at now. I think this is great incidentally, because as I said in our last meeting, we need to attach a purpose to the money, and this attaches the purpose to the money. But we also need to look at allowing Gumbo Limbo to use a portion of that property, not as a conveyance, just, not collecting rent, so we're not leasing, but a means of them being able to use the property, or a part of the property, to help them cope with shortages in space.
I think that's a good idea, but I think that's more for like the longer term discussion.
Yeah, I'm only
versus
looking
short
at,
term.
I'm only looking at a temporary, at temporary use. I'm not talking about them putting actual buildings in the ground. I'm talking about maybe taking a couple of trailers and putting it there, just to alleviate their space situation for the time being.
Agreed.
They've been working with staff to get that issue is addressed already
Oh, okay, good.
on site at Gumbo Limbo.
I just wanna make this as simple as possible
Mhm.
to get it open now.
Let me just make one point, is that I think simple is good, but I think we need to know some of the operational aspects of this, hours. Are we gonna have a park ranger there during the day to supervise it, and why not?
They would patrol probably, they'd have to.
Patrol, yeah, but it would be dusk till dawn, there's no way.
I just am concerned about having that, place unmonitored. I wanna know what the schedule is, hours of operation, what's permitted, activity within that. I think it's fine to move forward, but, I just wanna be sure that when we roll this out, that the place it's gotta be cleaned up. And I don't know whether that was in the budget, because I haven't seen that aspect of it. It's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I'd want to have a better idea about how the park is going to be operated, and who's going to be the manager and oversee it, and what are the hours they're going to check on it. Because I think it's a safety issue, because you've got, a waterfront area down there that, and I'm not sure how stable the bulkheads are around there. It's been a while since I've been down to the park, but I know there was some issues with mangroves overgrowing the area. So let's check out the safety aspect of it and get us some more operational issues, so that when we open it up, all these things have been considered.
I think we can do that. I mean, that's all part of, to me, the short-term and long-term planning. But by making, I don't mind doing it, I would add it as part of the emotion of this whole thing, is that we have picnic tables that tells me, are you renting those out or not? There's opportunities there. Those all have to be, I agree, the operational side has to be really thought out, and it has to involve the city to say, what is their plan, and how could they run this? And the one thing I would add that I see kind of missing across the board on a lot of things we do is we need ownership. We need ownership by a dedicated person on that park who is the accountable, responsible person. I don't want to hear that city permitting, it's got this person. There's got to be someone who will be accountable to it. And I think that's up to the combination as we go forward. Let's develop a plan, short-term and long-term, and this will be a starting point to do so.
Do you want to amend your motion, Mrs. Wright, about having to direct Brianne to go to the city to get some more information, and absolutely going forward with this, but so that we can work with the city
Well,
directly?
not more information, but to discuss what process we need to take to get it open in terms of,
That's what I was saying.
yeah, the safety issues and operations and things like that.
But in the meantime, I think we can add a line item to the budget covering these costs. As I said, we have a purpose, we want to open up the property for the public, and this gives us a starting point. And we have to do all the other things, as Bob mentioned. There are operational details that need to be taken care of, questions that need to be answered. But in the meantime, we can appropriate the funding for this and at least get things rolling.
What about getting the community involved with doing some of the things like the mulching and, things like that?
We could do that.
Community service through the schools and,
Well, there was back after one of the hurricanes, the 4 Rotary clubs in town got together and cleaned up all the down trees and hauled out quite a number of truckloads of debris that was blown down by the storm. And I think if you approach some of those civic groups, you'd be able to find willing hands to do that.
Well, I'm sure. But in the meantime, let's at least have some kind of funding in place that covers the bare minimum to get these things open. I agree that if we can get volunteers, that would be great, both for the mulching and for cleaning up the property. I'm sure there's a high school organization, even college fraternities and sororities as part of their community service programs, multitude of groups. But by the same token, we've heard about people asking us, well, are you going to devote money to this? So this is an opportunity for us to devote funding, and then we can take care of the other details as we approach them.
Yeah, one thing I mentioned too, Steve, is that our property is bordered on the north and the south by neighbors. And so we have to be really conscious of the neighbors with whatever activities we allow there. And I know there have been some concerns years ago. I had heard from some of the neighbors about, the amount of grilling and so forth that would go on there. So we need to think about whether we're going to regulate cooking or those activities.
Well,
certainly.
Sure. But the first way to regulate those activities is you don't you know, you don't put grills in like we have at Red Reef.
I'll bring my portable grill, that's what I'm
Okay.
saying, is that that's
All
what
right.
happens, so
And you
just need to anticipate
That's,
that.
and that's very easy, no grilling is allowed.
Well, I'm not gonna go that far.
Can I just make a motion? I think
Well,
we're
I think
digging
Erin
in.
was starting her motion, so
Yeah.
Oh,
I,
Aaron's doing it?
this was
Yeah.
her baby.
Okay,
No, I mean, I want to get it open, and as simple as possible, I make a motion to put aside $75,000 to get Ocean Strand open within 6 months, with the simplest plan that we can, just to get the gates open and a nice, simple walking area down to the water, possibly a soft launch if that's something that's doable for the kayaks. Maybe a couple of benches, we don't even need picnic tables. Maybe a couple of benches, so it restricts people from even eating there, just to sit. And then, you know, what was things called, toilets, facilities, as well. That's my motion. And to look and to discuss with the city the safety issues and the operation to get it open.
I second.
Good,
so I'd like to amend it,
okay.
okay? So I agree with the plan there is short-term opening it, but I'd like to amend it to look at a long-term plan for the course to have, you know, guided by city staff, someone from this board and someone from the city council participating, that has the guiding principles of it's gonna have community input, it's gonna preserve its natural beauty and environment as best it can, it's gonna address community needs, including the needs assessment. It will have a component of self-sustaining as best it can. This board will come back with recommendations of a long-term plan, and with community input.
Yes, I was just addressing the short term.
So I'm doing yours is a short term, I'm adding on the long term. Don't know what that's gonna cost, but that will put forth a plan for the future, and it'll be a multi-year plan that's not looking to be implemented right away or anything.
Sam, would you,
I believe that what the maker of the motion is saying is that the substitute motion or the amendment to the motion is not incompatible with the main motion.
Correct.
The objective is to meld the two into one agreeable motion. The maker and the second are having agreed as opposed to the substitute motion. So you cover both bases in one motion if you all agree to that approach.
do we need a second for the amended?
The answer is that the maker of the motion will agree to amend it to include the proposal of Commissioner Ernst, and I think you get some leverage to make the decision as a board.
Okay, Erin, would you like to agree
Yes,
to that
so
amendment?
agree to the amended motion that Mr. Ernst made.
Correct, it's a friendly amendment which would then amend the motion, include both motions melded into one.
Now, do we need a second for that?
I believe it would be helpful just to make sure.
Second.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Steve. Now, is there any more discussion? Okay. All in favor of the motion as stated by Mrs. Wright and Mr. Ernst and seconded by Mr. Engel, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes, Joanne.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Before we move on from this discussion, there's been a lot of suggestions that are offers for this property. I think we need to put this matter to rest once and for all, that the property is not for sale. And I would like to suggest a motion or a resolution, if you might, that the Beachy Park District will maintain in perpetuity this property as a recreational property, and that it not be offered at any time for sale. And then secondly, I'd like to suggest that we consider amending our enabling legislation to say that this property that's acquired by the district cannot be sold unless there's a general public referendum.
Mr. Gorin?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that, are we able to amend our enabling legislation? I think it's a great idea.
A couple of observations I can. The answer is yes. The delegation, the Palm Beach delegation would have to actually approve your amendment to the special act, which you could propose that for the next session, a little late this year because it's already almost the end of the session. But if it be your wish to amend the legislation to provide for the recommendation of the board to do so, we could write the proposed bill and submit it timely for next year's consideration by the delegation. It would be a special act amendment to your current charter.
And let me just add, the whole reason this is, that I wanted to make this an option for us is that we continue to hear discussion that, people are looking at the property. We had one developer wanted to buy the property. We summarily turned it down. I don't think there's anybody on city council that has any appetite for doing anything with this property other than keeping it as a park. I don't see anybody on this commission that has any appetite for doing anything but making it a park. So let's put a stake in the ground and make it clear that we're not interested in selling this property. That resolution would only go so far as the 5 people that are sitting on here, because if it changed in the future, that could be changed. If you amend the enabling legislation, that's not going to be possible. I know it caught everybody by surprise on this, but I just felt like it was, since we're talking about the property, since we've refuted any offers of this property that have been tendered to us for purchase or acquisition of this property, this sends a solid message that we're not going to do this except over Steve's dead body.
We can call this the over my dead body resolution.
Well, no, seriously, whether I can get a motion and a second to this motion or not, I wanted to put this on the table because I'm tired of listening to the rumors and the innuendos that are going on out there that the property might be for sale, because it's not. Never has been. Never
I'd
will
like
be.
to pass the gavel to Mrs. Wright and second this motion so that everybody understands that I too feel as strongly about this and that the rumors are not true that I want to sell Ocean Strand. So, Mrs. Wright.
So, can I talk?
Of course you can.
Look, fully supportive of not selling it, fully supportive of, limiting its use to its nature and beauty of it, but taking it the next step as a change of the charter or the underlying bylaws of our amendment will cost some money to do that. And the bylaws that we have are, there's other things in there that really should be kind of cleaned up. Then it just kind of opens that can of worms of, do you want to really open all that stuff up? Because it is there's parts of it that are very general, very vague, and they should just generally be cleaned up.
Well, that's the enabling legislation, Craig. I don't know what the cost would be involved in having the local delegation take that to Tallahassee and try to get that amended. I don't know that there's any cost involved in that. Sam, do you know anything?
I do actually, having filed a number of local bills over the years. 2 observations I made, Madam Acting Chair. Commissioner Rollins has 2 ideas, one of which is to file a declaration against that property which you do own as a public entity, declaring it to be for future, in perpetuity, to be conditioned as a open space, not to be developed, etc. You can actually do that theoretically tomorrow. You could prepare a declaration that you could publicly endorse, report against the property, which would essentially tell the public that you're not going to develop this property, it's not for sale, and it's not for anything except its natural condition. That's one element of the larger conversation. The second part of which is, if you change your special act, which is not an overly costly item, writing of a bill to amend your special act is not that difficult a job to do. Just remember something, that when you amend your special act, getting it changed is not as easy as writing a resolution or a contract, or in the case of filing a declaration. It's a doable event. The delegation would have to support it. The good news is that what you're promoting publicly this evening is something which is a public purpose. It's one which retains and promotes the natural condition of that property, which I would assume for discussion would be supported by the delegation. It's not an economic issue, it's really one of what your main purpose is as a public entity, and supports your cause as a public entity in the context of getting it supported. So you could do 1A and 1B, 1A being to do a declaration, which we could prepare for the next meeting or so, at least to share that with you. And the 1B being to write a bill for next year that would otherwise make it part of the permanent record of the special act, which says property is not for sale and property acquired by the district is not for sale.
Unless by referendum.
Unless by referendum.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you're doing a declaration and you say in perpetuity, how can a new commissioner come in and change that?
Perpetuity means what it means. One could argue that this commission cannot bind future commissions. That's an argument that can be legally argued. But a declaration is what a declaration is, and that's the intention of the board, which was to in fact preserve this property in its natural state. I would tend to think that your declaration and recordation of a declaration is public notice that you meant what you said, and you said what you meant.
I would like to add one thing to the enabling legislation. I would like to add to public referendum and act of the state legislature, so that there would be two parts. The public would have to agree
They support it,
to support the sale of the property.
but if the state does not,
But if the state does not, that renders the referendum null and void. I want to make it as difficult as possible to convey the property.
Are we talking about all our properties, or are we just talking about Ocean Strand here?
I think we would.
Well, I was talking about Ocean Strand and the declaration, and then the motion could apply to all of our properties. Now, the one thing that I would say, if we did that, and if there were ever a public purpose that would be better served by the district selling some property, would be locked in and would not be able to do it. And that's the reason why I'd say a referendum would be as far as I'd want to carry it, because it'd be the desires of the local population. If they supported selling a piece of property, then a referendum to that effect, to me, would be a vote from the public and the people who are using the property, rather than having the legislature weigh in on it, Steve.
Well, it'd be very easy, well, I don't want to say very easy, but we all know that when it comes to elections and referendums, with one recent exception, money talks. So somebody can come in, throw a couple of $1 million at a referendum, and the next thing you know, we have a referendum that supports the sale of Ocean Breeze or not Patch Reef, but Sugar Sand, or any one of our properties, and then we have to do whatever the referendum says. But if we have the public referendum followed by a necessary act of the state legislature, it makes it that much more difficult for somebody with a ton of money to go and throw the money at the issue and persuade the public that we need to sell it.
You can make the same case for the legislature, Steve. You know,
True, but that would involve more money by.
I prefer, the local, the population control what the community wants, and if you know the history of Boca, the possibility of that happening is very, very remote, much more remote than somebody trying to buy this election. But what I would suggest is this, I'd like to make the declaration about Ocean Strand, and I'd like to have Sam bring that back to our next meeting so we can solve that issue. The legislative session, for all practical purposes, is over. We're not going to get anything submitted this year, and we have time to think about it. And so, but I wanted to get that on the table so that we could think about it. But I would like that declaration about Ocean Strand, that the property is not for sale.
I agree with what you're saying. I think the declaration is a good one that sets the tone of things. Going to the legislator, I'm just concerned about the unintended consequences of what does that do? And I'm very keen on, look, I'm all about, leave yourself somewhat of some flexibility. And that being, if you are having, one of our needs assessments says we need to have shuffleboard courts. I don't know, and we're renting shuffleboard courts out there. I want the ability to be able to program and have rental. I just want to be very cognizant of, that's what I mean of the self-sustaining part. If you have to have parking meters out there, then that might be the consideration. I want to make sure we leave ourselves with enough flexibility that it remains in public hands, as you described. That I'm all on board with.
It wasn't limited to any particular recreational. It's for recreational purposes, and that's something that we can define, and we see it around us every day what those are.
Yes.
Those components are. So I agree with you, but I think that just having a declaration that the property will be preserved in accordance with some of the things that you mentioned, Craig, as far as the stated purpose for this development. I think that That'll shut down a lot of chatter about this property, and let people know that we're dead serious.
If I may, Madam Chair, Acting Chair, a couple of observations. That's why I kind of cast it as a 1A and a 1B, the 1A being the declaration in perpetuity for no sale of that specific piece of property, which you can do as a public entity on property which you own. The second part of which is, and I'm going to venture into an area which I probably shouldn't, but I think I need to hear this. When you ask the legislature to do something for you, you give them a bill, you don't get to control their ultimate decision. They can change your special act in a way which you didn't contemplate, for example. So you can ask them for a change that would otherwise preserve your right to say, their right to say no, and they can say, you know something, while we get this bill in front of us, we're going to modify that. You're not in their midst. You're not in their mix, as it were, and they could do something theoretically that you didn't ask for. I'm not suggesting bad things from the legislative delegation, but it could happen, because once it's out of your hands, off this dais, it's in somebody else's hands in Tallahassee, which is not just the delegation from Palm Beach, but the entire legislature that have to vote on a special act. That being said, there's case law which tells us that the will of the people that elected you, by the way, all of you, which are within your own districts, those are the people that delegations and courts and others yield to, which is what is the will of the people? The people, by public referendum, want to allow the property to be sold or not sold. That is typically yielded to by the courts, which is what do the people want that live in that particular area of concern, the city, the county, the district, etc. That's very strong medicine in the context of what is legally persuasive. I just have some concern not knowing all the members in the Palm Beach delegation what their thinking could be, not just today, not just tomorrow, but down the road when you're not sitting here anymore and they decide, well, maybe it's time to abolish the district. Maybe we should liquidate their assets and allow them to be handled by the city, local, or town, or some other entity which we can create. Not that you asked for that, and not that you're willing to propose that, but someone in a part of the state of Florida that's not the Palm Beach delegation suggests that's an amendment they'd like to tack onto the bill. And you're not there, you have no lobbyist to lobby for you, and you wake up one morning and you're out of business. That's a very draconian answer to the larger question. It could happen, legally is possible.
Well, those are the unintended consequences that Craig was referring to.
Yes.
So what I'll do is retract 1B and just ask for a declaration for this council, this commission to approve that the property is not for sale and it kept for recreational purposes and for in perpetuity, whatever word might be more appropriate, Sam.
Yes, sir. It's a strong motion from a legal perspective. If you direct this amendment, Madam Chair, to prepare a declaration document which in perpetuity declares the property not for sale and only for open space, public use, and recreational purposes, that's a very strong signal. That's a recorded document in Palm Beach County, which the public would have access to and would then be on notice of, that it's your public intention now and in the future that all bets are off to sell that property.
And I second the amended motion.
Oh, discussion. None, okay.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good, there you go.
And you have to see.
Motion passed.
Motion passes.
You get a yellow back. Sorry.
My fingers weren't there.
Yeah.
You did well.
Okay. So, we accomplished a lot there.
Yep.
Commissioner Ernst, approval of payroll and invoices, please.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion for approval of $71,409.15.
Second.
Discussion, commissioners? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Joanne, please. Okay, good. It's now time for the reports and discussion items. Executive Director Harms, please.
Commissioners, in your packets, there's some information about a proposed traffic signal easement at Sugar Sand. The city is upgrading the traffic signal at Camino and Military to make it more resistant during the hurricanes, and at council's advice, we're going to put that on the agenda for the next meeting, so that in case there's any members of the public who want to weigh in on it, we can allow for that, and we'll make a vote on that next meeting. We sent the revised MOU to the Friends, we have not received that back, so I know I'm gonna meet with John Holloway at some point this week, and we'll touch base and see where we're at in the donor, as well as the Friends are gonna meet with the city to review the line items of the funicular on March 5th, and make a decision whether or not we move forward with the funicular or another option to make the tower ADA compliant. And the pipes and pumping project is still not out to bid. We don't have a time frame as to when it will go out. I know that they're trying to get it to purchasing now. They expect to start the project this year, but we don't know if it'll be completed until next fiscal year. And again, we really don't know where we're at with the pricing until the bids come back. And I hope to have more information once that happens, to update you on the project. So you all have asked a lot about that. And that's it.
Thank you, Brianne. Mr. Gordon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On a personal note, I'd like to say thank you to each of you for your kindness during my recent recovery from surgery, which I'm progressing on. I do anything not to wear a tie, and I guess I performed well because I'm not wearing one. But I thank you for the personal kindness and what you sent to my home, and to me personally, it was very kind of all of you to be thoughtful. I must confess to you that although I love the other public entities I work for, your civility is legion. You are very civil, not just to each other, but to the public as well, and how you treat everyone. So you treat me very well, and I appreciate that very much. To answer one of the questions this evening that came up regarding the AG's request, the request went out on February the 5th, which we copied you with when it went out. Interestingly, as of January 1, the new Attorney General has had a supplemental request of our office regarding what it is that we submitted, and it goes to the following. They wanted a memorandum of law to support our request, which we submitted during our request. They wanted to confirm by minutes of this organization, the agency, whether or not you actually authorized it. If we didn't just simply go in the back room and decide to cook up a request to the AG's office and make them, answer. And we had minutes, we had obviously the public comment to proceed. And he also wanted some other information which was supplemental to the request. That being said, we have another request pending with the AG's office from another city, actually, that's several months ahead of yours, actually. The opinions division that used to exist in years past used to include, half a dozen lawyers or more. It's down to probably one lawyer, and they're a little bit on the slow side getting the work done, so I cannot predict the when part, but the likelihood of getting an answer in the near term is probably not going to happen. It'll be several months before we get a response back from Tallahassee. The good news is they acknowledged receiving the request. They did ask us for supplemental data with regard to your confirmation of making that request. I have a good sense we'll get an answer, and it'll be one that we have to live with, obviously. But it's not going to happen in a matter of days or weeks. It'll be several months before the answer comes back. And to that extent, we'll be happy to answer any questions and keep you fully advised of what happens there. And that's all I really have this evening. Glad to be back in the seat. Glad to see you all, and glad to be among you. And thank you for that.
Thank you, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, may I ask?
Of course.
Sam,
Yes,
in that spirit, the reason I supported that idea of just asking is really for the concept of, first and foremost, it's very far down the road, but for the golf course, the hotel site.
Correct.
And so my thought process is that we don't know what we're doing completely on the hotel site, although it's been designed in part of the golf course and everything. When we get closer to conclusion, should it be something else? I don't know. I think there's a lot of moving parts that will evolve. It would be better to have that answer up front.
Yes.
And the secondary part of it is really just about the whole concept of rent, lease. Can I rent a picnic table at Ocean Strand? We're already doing these things to kind of say that it should be doable, but don't want to be prevented later on it. So it's really in the context of programming and, separately for the hotel, never in the concept of, okay, now I'm going to enter a 99-year lease on Ocean Strand to build a hotel. Not in the realm. So
the request, Madam Chair, the request as filed leaves open. It's kind of trifurcated into various series of questions, and we did that with your direction and intentionally to give the AG some opportunity to pick and choose how best to answer all those questions, all of which I think are still relevant, notwithstanding the motion that was adopted a few moments ago on the declaration of restrictions for Ocean Strand. It's still worth asking that question. I know Jake probably tell you this during one of the meetings, but AG's opinions are not specifically binding upon the requester. They're persuasive. If you get an ethics commission opinion for any one of you individually, that's binding on you that asked for it. AG's opinions, when you get one back that's in your favor, you think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and you support it, and you like it, and you rely upon it, and courts rely upon them. If it comes back adverse to you, the answer is just another law firm giving you an opinion. And the answer is that you can, kind of weigh the equities of that situation. I think, however, that we've given the AG some homework, we've given the AG some research that I think was well requested and we provided. And it really is a genuine question, or set of questions we've asked. They're not illegitimate questions, they're thoughtful, they're important, and to the extent that we're asking for guidance, we've asked for guidance and direction. So I would keep the letter in Tallahassee, let it sit until we get an answer. But I think that given the fact that it was a multiple set of questions, I think we're going to get some good answers.
Okay.
Thank you.
You want to start off with your commissioner's report?
Okay. Commissioner's report. My peers here, I had the opportunity to go to the El Rio Park opening, and it was, I'd say, very well received by the community. And the park is truly a magnificent addition to the city of Boca. I do want to mention in the process, I had the opportunity to talk to the predecessor of Seat 1, Dr. Dennis Frisch, who was very involved in the opening. And in that conversation, we talked about Ocean Strand, and the Recreation Services Group would be more than willing to participate in any kind of design development. So I turn that over to you, Aaron, as another resource. It was a great conversation, a great day. A little rainy, but overall our rec services folks did a phenomenal job of coordinating the opening of it, and I think it was very well received. It's a very different type of park, and I don't see Ocean Strand evolving into that kind of park. To me, our Ocean Strand has got to be preserved, a lot less cement, very natural as much as we can make it, but just serving different needs. So,
Right, I totally agree. Thank you. Erin?
Yeah, I had a couple of things. My first one is about the credit rating that we took a vote on a couple of meetings ago. I'm having some second thoughts on that. Now, Brianne's still working on getting a quote. Apparently, Moody's is very unresponsive and slow to respond, or not slow to respond.
They have not got the information yet.
Right, so we're still gonna be getting a quote, and we still need to vote on it when she gets it. But after thinking about it some more, and after knowing that Jerry Ford recommended that we don't go out for a credit rating, and that we're not focused on taking any loans for any building at this time, knowing also that it's a very invasive process. I've learned a little bit more about it, and it's a very invasive process that they do. At least from what I met with Sam and he discussed it some more. I just don't see the reason why we're going out for that at this time, including the cost of it. So it's not something that we can vote on now or anything like that, but when Brianne does come back with the final costs and a little bit more information, we'll be taking another vote then to get that credit rating.
Can I address your concerns?
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, I don't think you should be concerned about the credit rating. There is a cost to it, but there is also a savings to it. So part of our overall bank transition is to have a revolving facility available to us. And I consider that a giant revolver, that credit facility, $1 million, is not going to be giant, but it's our giant credit card, I should say. It's a resource to have, and it would be far more important to have that during the construction of the golf course to make sure that you're meeting payroll, that there are no exceptions, there's no unknowns. It's really to have that. The credit rating will give you the pricing that will give you credibility for it. And so you will have a pricing grid that is associated with it. And as far as invasive, I don't see it as invasive at all. It's a very standard routine process. And if you look at the majority of the credit ratings that are out there, for a public entity, we should be rated pretty well. So Mr. Ford's concern was really around back when we didn't have the additional $2 million, and when we had a complete drawdown of things. That was very, his pushback was it's maybe not a good time to do it now. To be honest with you, I see no harm in getting your credit rating, knowing where you stand, and maintaining it. And it, by the way, it's an independent authority who's gonna say who and what you are, and they will probably learn from that too. Things that they'll compare you with other municipal entities and suggest how you benchmark financially with those others and where we should approve. Right now, this board has no other authority other than our CPA who comes in and looks at it. I think having that validation is a good thing to have, and it is a prudent thing to do for this board, and it's really the safety net as we go down the next 5 years. So you have that credit rating gives you that level of flexibility. So
I'm gonna ask the same question I've asked before. What if it's not what we, it's not a good credit rating? You said that it doesn't have to be published, but from what I understand, it does have to be published.
no, the credit rating will come back to, the Moody's folks will come back to you and tell you where they're at with it, what the recommendation is, and they'll show you how they align with that is. And so you have an option to pursue the credit rating or not. The reality is that most public entities are investment grade. So that means you're A3, A2, or A1. It would be highly unlikely that we would not be investment grade. And that's something in conversation with Mr. Ford I've had, that's something in conversations with Moody's, you can see by all their credit ratings that are published. So I think that it's beneficial for the district to have that credit rating.
But whatever document they come back to us with is a public document for the public, right? I mean,
What are you talking about? Were they asking of the credit rating?
yeah,
Not if you don't have it printed, but if you, I don't see
not
that.
if you don't have, I don't think they're just gonna call us and say, hey, this is your credit rating
Yes, they will.
for $12,000, but then we're not being transparent.
Sam, would
Yes,
you like
ma'am.
to weigh in on this, please?
Any emails, any text messages, any letters of any kind exchanged between the rating agency and this organization are clearly public record. There's no exemption under Chapter 119 for that. To the extent that a rating agency would give you an oral conclusion, I'm not familiar with that process. I'm familiar with the fact that when you go for a bond rating, typically you have to, fess up to the organization. All of you have to open up your heart and your soul to the organization to get your rating. And you're going to be clear about the basis upon which you're getting that rating. But to the extent there's any documents of any kind that would be offered to support or answer or to even begin the process,
So they're all public documents, and so it does, I'm talking from a private individual company,
yeah.
you can have it without that.
Correct.
But I really see no harm in everything in writing anyway. So even if the worst case scenario is the rating is a BBB rating, that's still gonna give you better pricing than you would get for anything else. And so it establishes where you're at and where, if you wanna be a higher credit rating, where you need to go. So I think it puts you forth a good roadmap financially and gives a good oversight, whether it's this board or another board in the future, that will kind of keep them guided by, here are standards for a taxing authority district that keep us kind of a little bit better budgeting and another set of eyes for oversight.
If I may just quickly supplement my conversation. What I have seen before is where the rating agency will submit a draft report and it's stamped in large letters for discussion purposes only, not a public record, subject to further review, etc. Unfortunately, once that document leaves Moody's or Standard & Poor's or S&P, Fitch, it's public. So it's a public record. Now, what you could always do is you can get the draft and essentially ask not to get a final report. But the draft is the draft. You can't make it go away in the context of public records. But that is theoretically possible. You get a draft report not published in final, and it's not a final report. It's just a draft report that gave you an answer, a tentative answer, subject to being finalized. That is possible. It's no less a public record, but it's not final.
Yes, but bottom line, worst case scenario is you're not investment grade. And I say, what harm is that anyway? I would argue that if you go and take a look at all of the public entities and what their credit ratings are, okay, you're going to find the large majority of them skewed towards the AAA rated, A, AAA, AA rated. So with that, I would say there's really no harm in us doing it, even if we came back with a C rating, Aaron. What does that do for us? What it tells us is, well, what do we have to do to get to an investment grade rating? They are going to outline those things, and I think then that puts us on a different financial path going forward. What do we need to do? They realize our nonprofit structure is not here to build a big giant reserve. We are here to serve the community and to take care of parks and recs. They will take that all into consideration and compare us with like entities. So,
Okay, it was just something I wanted to bring up that I'm having second thoughts about it, so.
fine.
And when we get the information back, we'll decide from there.
I was just gonna say, where we're at is that there's an analyst who is separate, and I'm still waiting for that person to call, and I sent another email to the Southeast region person to say that I hadn't heard back and wanted to follow up, so once they let us know everything that they'll need, then they can give us a price, and I can obviously come back to you guys for approval of that.
I have one more thing. I really didn't want to talk about it at a meeting, but after discussions with Brianne and Sam, it's something that I feel like I needed to bring up. So I wrote down something so I wouldn't say the wrong thing or skew my words or anything. Susie, so no one knows more than me about the perceptions of a threat. Fully aware of those and what other people could think or whatever. I completely understand where you're coming from. I do not want, but after reading I read the police report about a week ago, and I know this hasn't been brought up in our meetings at all. I read the police report about a week ago, and I was just looking for a little bit of clarification on it. Because I was under the impression, and I wasn't there after the meeting, but I have talked to people who were there. And I was under the impression that the police report was focused on what happened after the meeting. But the report itself, all it discussed was what happened was during public comment during the meeting. And I just think it's important that the public fully understand that we encourage public comments, including criticism during public comment time. So I'm not questioning at all that you felt threatened in any way, shape, or form by somebody who spoke during public comment, and by his behavior after the meeting. But it was just a little bit unclear to me, and I just wanted to make it clear to everybody that, you know what I mean?
Well, let me just pose the
Let me
question.
Let me jump in there, Sue, real quick.
Okay, all
Aaron, I read the police report also. The first part of it did talk about the public comments, but the last page of that contained the comments that the situation that occurred was after the public comments, and it was clear in that report that this was something that happened after the public comments. And I had an interaction with the same individual once before, who was pretty aggressive, but I'm the same size as this gentleman was, so we quickly settled that notion that if we were going to have a civil discourse, then it should be done in a civil manner. And I provided him some documents later on and thought that was into it. After this meeting, and one in particular you're describing, I saw the gentleman get up and I think he only took about 3 steps before he got to Sue and was in her face, pointing her finger, and I would say that he was very aggressive. And if I'd been someone that was 5'4" and 73, I might have been intimidated by the person. So I just asked Sue if we could remove her. So there was no restrictions on this person's First Amendment rights. But when you're talking to a public official, it should be in a respectful fashion like we do. We're always respectful to those people who come to the microphone here, and we hear some things that sometimes are not the most pleasant things to hear, but yet we're protecting the person's individual right to say what he thinks about our performance or lack of performance. But that report did go on. I think it was a misrepresentation that they indicated that his First Amendment rights had been violated. I really do, because they were not. He spoke freely at that podium about the way he felt, and which was his infinite right to do. But to go up in what I consider a very threatening fashion, when you point your finger at a person and you're really aggressive, That's, to me, was a little bit threatening.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm not addressing the fact that she didn't feel threatened in any way. But the police report that I read didn't mention anything that happened after.
I'll show you my report,
Meeting.
because mine is different, and they must have been 2 reports. I'll bring that to show you, but it did say that it happened after the meeting. I don't think that there's anybody on this dais up here that has any reason to violate anybody's First Amendment rights, and I was kind of bothered that there was any representation to the contrary, because we had never prevented anybody from saying their mind at one of our meetings.
Right, and that's just what I want to make clear, and what I want to be clear in that police report is that where the threatening issue came up was after the meeting
Correct.
and not during the public comment, which is, when I read the report, that was what the issue that I had, was that it only mentioned the public comment portion of it.
It did mention, I agree with that, but there was a section on the very last page where it did, and I'll bring that for you, but I agree with you. I mean, it was an unfortunate situation. I'm sorry that it happened. I'm sorry that it was kind of blown out of proportion, really.
Yeah, and nobody should ever feel threatened in any way by anybody else. And if you did, absolutely, you do what you need to do in terms of that. I just want to make sure for the public's, information that everything is 100% accurate on that, because it's a public document. And she's a representative of the district on that document as a commissioner. So that's just that was just something that when I read the police report, it was something that I felt I needed to discuss. And after meeting with Sam, he recommended that I talk about it at a meeting.
I'm actually happy that you did, because during public request, when the gentleman was speaking, I had to caution someone else who the smoke was coming out of his ears not to get up and make a statement, because it was going to escalate even then. So, but afterward, I have never, ever told anyone that they can't speak. And in fact, Brianne gets a little aggravated because I open public requests up again, and sometimes I let people go on and on. That's what we're here for. We're here to listen, and I've never shut anybody down. If I have, it has not been intentional, but I don't recall any time in 10 years that I've done that. And I felt so, not only because the individual was coming at me over the table and shaking his finger and spitting at me, and then when 3 or 4 other people were just as alarmed about it and needed to take me out of the room, and one of our staff even felt necessary to follow me home when I, was obviously shaken. It kind of all came together that I just don't need to put up with that. And
No,
and
absolutely.
I understand, I know, and I'm glad you brought it up, I really am.
But I just, again, the police report, I hope it's 100% clear that it was after the public comment.
Well, is there a way to amend a police report, Sam?
Yes,
I don't think you have to amend it. I'm telling you that.
it's up to you all, but
I didn't see the last paragraph that you're talking about.
Yeah, because even when I showed that to my partner, he said, well, it says in the last paragraph this happened after the public request. So I don't think there's any need to amend it. I believe it's correct, and I'll bring a copy of it so that we can clear the air on that.
may I inquire quickly, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Commissioner, you filed your own police report, your own incident?
I
You did, but did Commissioner Rollins file one as well?
No.
Okay,
do.
right, that's what I understood. So
No.
you're supplementing the record with what you told whom, or you believed whom,
He got a copy of the police report.
right?
I got a copy of the police report, and I was standing right beside
Speaker.
Susie when this situation occurred, and I was the one that grabbed her by the elbow and took her out of the room.
To the extent that the record now reflects those facts, I think that you're in better shape now than you were without, you can't have individual conversation with your colleagues without taking things in public, which you've done this evening. Having said that, Commissioner Rollins has given his analysis of what occurred. The incident report is a public record. If there's still some need to amend it, you can amend an incident report if the police will simply accept the amendment, but it seems to me that the record reflects perhaps more of the clarification that you're asking for than not.
Yeah, it's just that it was after the public comment was where it happened, not during public comment.
I actually showed that to one of the city council members who had not seen. I had shown that to one of the city council members who had not seen it to clarify the circumstances around it, so.
Okay, Madam Chair, regrettably, because you are public figures, you are subject to the Sunshine Law, you know, if Commissioner Wright and the chair were to meet in Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks or someplace to have a conversation, although it may have been an innocent conversation about family and the Marlins and the weather, it's not how it will be perceived. And to have that private conversation, the appearance has a problem, could cause someone a problem. So when the commissioner asked me whether or not the point could be clarified, I said the only place to clarify it is on the public record during commissioner comments, because that's the only logical place to have the conversation. You can't have it outside the public realm. She asked for clarification. I think I'm just a lawyer, but you certainly opened up the door to clarification that perhaps was a need to be conducted, and I commend you for having it.
And I appreciate it, Aaron, I really do. I'm very sincere in that, because I didn't know how I was going to address this. If I had brought it up, then it sounds like I'm making excuses, but it was very real to me.
Oh, absolutely, and it's so unfortunate, you know, that anybody feels threatened by anybody else. So, so thank you for discussing it.
And thank you.
That's the end of my.
Steve, you haven't had a chance.
Because I have nothing to say. I have no comment at this point.
I'm good, so.
I just have a couple of things. I attended the turtle release on Thursday, and it was very, very interesting. John Holloway let go of Peter Parker, which was a very emotional thing for him, because when he came to start his job as executive director of Friends, that was the day Peter Parker was brought in and with his flipper injured. So he got to go take him out and release him. We also had the Tom Cup the other day, and Sabre did send us information about what a great job that staff did and what great job or what great condition the fields are in. So we appreciate that. The only other thing, I know I'm sounding very panicky about this. It's not a panicky thing, it's just a preparation thing, is how do we proceed, Mr. Gordon, with how the city and state are going to address the coronavirus and our meetings?
I'll defer to the executive director, but I will tell you that there are various cities, as recently as this morning, were publishing various informational memoranda with regard to dealing with the public, particularly in public places. I'm happy to share that data with you. The governor's office is issuing an executive order as of this morning, which I've seen a copy of. It's published, as you know. But to the extent that I would defer to Brianne, certainly you want to be thoughtful about this issue, you want to be proactive about this issue, and publicly make statements on the record that you intend to address it in the appropriate fashion in which the order was issued by the governor.
I talked to Michael Calvert. The city is putting together a plan. They're working on ordering necessary supplies like hand sanitizers that Commissioner Ernst had talked about. They're supposed to put out a statement, and he said once they get the statement, he's going to forward it to me, and then obviously I'll send it out to you. I would expect that they'll send something out in the near future, since it's here now in Florida. But we don't have a statement yet from the city.
The city is including the district properties and
Yes.
following a consistent and common manner for whatever.
Yes, for the employees, for the public, everybody, yes.
Thank you. Future agenda items
We have traffic signal.
and FAU? How you doing with that?
I'm still waiting to hear from them. They're gonna take it to their legal team. I heard from, not Ryan, but Chris last week. I don't know how long that will take to get through.
And CRA?
I'm meeting with Merv this week. We don't have a date yet, but I'm meeting with Merv this week to talk about some things, and then we'll keep moving forward on that. And then I'll talk to Mike Boca about setting up a date for that hearing.
Any other future agenda items, commissioners?
Whoa. Move to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
All right,
Thank you, everybody.
so you guys want to be happy?